This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, but just never took the time to do. So I'm going to do a few of these things for you tonight. If my voice will hold up. The first one is called The Spell of the Yukon. I wanted the gold and I sought it. I scrabbled and mucked like a slave. Was it famine or scurvy? I fought it. Till the moon set the pearly peaks gleaming and the stars tumbled out neck and crop, and I've thought that I surely was dreaming with a piece of the world piled on top. The summer no sweeter was ever, the sunshiny woods all a-thrill, the grayling a leap in the river, the bighorn asleep on the hill, the strong life that never knows harness, the wilds where the caribou call, the freshness, the freedom, the farness, oh God, how I'm stuck on it all. The winter, the brightness that blinds you, the white land locked tight as a drum, the cold fear that follows and finds you, the silence that bludgeons you dumb, the snows that are older than history, the woods where the weird shadows slant, the stillness, the moonlight, the mystery. I've bade 'em goodbye, but I can't. There's a land where the mountains are nameless and the rivers all run God knows where. There are lives that are erring and aimless and deaths that just hang by a hair. There are hardships that nobody reckons. There are valleys unpeopled and still. There's a land, oh, it beckons and beckons, and I want to go back, and I will. They're making my money diminish. I'm sick of the taste of champagne. Thank God when I'm skidding to a finish, I'll pike to the Yukon again. I'll fight, and you bet it's no sham fight. It's hell, but I've been there before. And it's better than this by a damn sight, so me for the Yukon once more. There's gold, and it's haunting and haunting. It's luring me on as of old. Yet it isn't the gold that I'm wanting, so much as just finding the gold. It's the great big broad land way up yonder. It's the forest where silence has lease. It's the beauty that thrills me with wonder. It's the stillness that fills me with peace. This next one I'd like to do for you, baby, is The Face on the Barroom Floor. 'Twas a balmy summer's evening, and a goodly crowd was there, which well nigh filled Joe's barroom on the corner of the square. And as songs and witty stories came through the open door, a vagabond crept slowly in and posed upon the floor. Where did it come from? Someone said. The wind has blown it in. What does it want? Another cried. Some whiskey, rum, or gin? Here, Toby, seek him if your stomach's equal to the work. I wouldn't touch him with a fork. He's filthy as a Turk. This badinage the poor wretch took with stoical good grace. In fact, he smiled as though he thought he'd struck the proper place. Come, boys, I know there's a kindly hearts among so good a crowd. To be in such good company would make a deacon proud. Give me a drink, that's what I want. I'm out of funds, you know. When I had cash to treat the gang, this hand was never slow. What? You laugh as if you thought this pocket never held a sou. I once was fixed as well, my boys, as any one of you. There, thanks, that's braced me nicely. God bless you one and all. Next time I pass this good saloon, I'll make another call. Give you a song? No, I can't do that. My singing days are past. My voice is cracked, my throat's worn out, and my lungs are going fast. Say, give me another whiskey, and I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tell you a funny story and a fact, I promise too. That I was ever a decent man, not one of you would think. But I was some 4 or 5 years back. Say, give me another drink. Fill her up, Joe. I want to put some life into my frame. Such little drinks to a bum like me are miserably tame. 5 fingers there, that's the scheme, and cork and whiskey too. Well, here's luck, boys, and landlord, my best regards to you. You've treated me pretty kindly, and I'd like to tell you how I came to be the dirty sot you see before you now. As I told you, once I was a man with muscle, frame, and health, and but for a blunder ought to have made a considerable wealth. I was a painter, and not one that daubed on bricks and wood, but an artist, and for my age was rated pretty good. I worked hard at my canvas and was bidding fair to rise, for gradually I saw the star of fame before my eyes. I made a picture, perhaps you've seen it. 'Tis called The Chase of Fame. It brought me 1,500 pounds and added to my name. And then I met a woman. Now comes the funny part, with eyes that petrified my brain and sunk into my heart. Why don't you laugh? 'Tis funny that the vagabond you see could ever love a woman and expect her love for me. But 'twas so, and for a month or two her smiles were freely given, and when her loving lips met mine it carried me to heaven. Did you ever see a woman for whom your soul you'd give, with a form like the Milo Venus, too beautiful to live, with eyes that would beat the Koh-i-Noor and a wealth of chestnut hair? If so, 'twas she, for there never was another half so fair. I was working on a portrait one afternoon in May of a fair-haired boy, a friend of mine, who lived across the way. And Madeline admired it, and much to my surprise, said she'd like to know the man that had such dreamy eyes. It didn't take long to know him, and before the month had flown, my friend had stolen my darling, and I was left alone. And ere a year of misery had passed above my head, the jewel I had treasured so had tarnished and was dead. That's why I took to drink, boys, why I never saw you smile. I thought you'd be amused and laughing all the while. Why, what's the matter, friend? There's a teardrop in your eye. Come laugh like me. 'Tis only babes and women that should cry. Say, boys, if you give me just another whiskey, I'll be glad, and I'll draw right here a picture of the face that drove me mad. Give me that piece of chalk with which you marked the baseball score, and you shall see the lovely Madeline upon the barroom floor. Another drink. With chalk in hand, the vagabond began to sketch a face that well might buy the soul of any man. Then he placed another lock upon the shapely head. With a fearful shriek he leaped and fell across the picture dead. This one, baby, is one I think the kids like a little bit, called The Ballad of Blasphemous Bill. I took a contract to bury the body of Blasphemous Bill Mackay, whenever, wherever, or whatsoever the manner of death he die. Whether he die in the light o' day or under the peak-faced moon, in cabin or dance hall, camp or dive, muclucs or patent shoon. On velvet tundra or virgin peak by glacier drift or draw, in muskeg hollow or canyon gloom by avalanche, fang or claw. By battle, murder, or sudden wealth, by pestilence, ouch, or lead, I swore on the book I would follow and look till I found my tombless dead. But Bill was a dainty kind of cuss, and his mind was mighty sot on a dinky patch with flowers and grass and a civilized boneyard lot. And where he died or how he died, it didn't matter a damn, so long as he had a grave with frills and a tombstone epigram. So I promised him, and he paid the price in good Checheco coin, which the same I blowed in that very night down in the Tenderloin. Then I painted a 3-foot slab of pine, here lies Bill Mackay, and I hung it up on the cabin wall and waited for Bill to die. Years passed away, and at last one day came a squaw with a story strange of a long deserted line of traps way back of the Bighorn Range. Of a little hut by the Great Divide with a white man stiff and still, lying there by his lonesome self, and I figured it must be Bill. So I thought of the contract I'd made with him, and I took down from the wall the swell black box with a silver plate he'd picked out for himself. And I packed it full of grub and hooch, and I slung it on the sleigh. Then I harnessed up my team of dogs and was off by the dawn of day. You know what it's like in the Yukon wild when it's 69 below, when the ice worms wriggle their purple heads through the crust of the silver snow, when the pine trees crack like little guns in the silence of the wood, and the icicles hang down like tusks under the parka hood, when the stovepipe smoke breaks sudden off and the sky is weirdly lit, and the careless feel of a bit of steel burns like a red-hot spit. When the mercury is a frozen ball and the frost fiend stalks to kill. Well, it was just like that day when I set out to look for Bill. Oh, the awful hush that seemed to crush me down on every hand as I blundered blind with the trail to find to that blank and bitter land. Half dazed, half crazed in the winter wild with its grim, heartbreaking woes and the ruthless strife of a grip on life that only the sourdough knows. North by the compass, north I pressed, river and peak and plain. Past like a dream I slept to lose, and I waked to dream again. River and plain and mighty peak, and who could stand unawed? As their summits blazed, he could stand undazed at the foot of the throne of God. North, north, through a land accursed, shunned by the scouring brutes, and all I heard was my own harsh word and the whine of the Malamutes. Till at last I came to a cabin squat built in the side of a hill, and I burst in the door, and there on the floor, frozen to death, lay Bill. Ice, white ice, like a winding sheet, sheathing each smoke-grimed wall, ice on the stovepipe, ice on the bed, ice gleaming over all. Sparkling ice in the dead man's chest, glittering ice in his hair, ice on his fingers, ice in his heart, ice in his glassy stare. Hard as a log and trussed like a frog with his arms and legs outspread, I gazed at the coffin I'd brought for him, and I gazed at the gruesome dead. And at last I spoke. Bill liked his joke, but still gall darn his eyes. A man had ought to consider his mates in the way he goes and dies. Have you ever stood in an Arctic hut in the shadow of the pole, with a little coffin 6x3 and a grief you can't control? Have you ever sat by a frozen corpse that looks at you with a grin that seems to say you may try all day, but you'll never jam me in? I'm not a man of the quitting kind, but I never felt so blue as I sat there gazing at that stiff and studying what I'd do. Then I rose and I kicked off the husky dogs that were nosing round about, and I lit a roaring fire in the stove, and I started to thaw Bill out. Well, I thawed and I thawed for 13 days, but it didn't seem no good. His arms and legs stuck out like pegs if they was made of wood. Till at last I said it ain't no use, he's froze too hard to thaw. He's obstinate and he won't lie straight, so I guess I've got to, go ahead Jody, put it in, saw. So I sawed off poor Bill's arms and legs, and I laid him snug and straight in the little coffin he picked for himself with a dinky silver plate. And I came nigh near shedding a tear as I nailed him safely down. Then I stowed him away in my Yukon sleigh, and I started back to town. So I buried him as the contract was in a narrow grave and deep, and there he's waiting, the great cleanup when the judgment sluice gets sweep. And I smoke my pipe and I meditate in the light of the midnight sun, and sometimes I wondered if they was the awful things I'd done. And as I sit and the parson talks expounding of the law, I often think of poor old Bill and how hard he was to saw. Here's one I think is, I've read an awful lot, and I think I've gone over this one quite a bit too, called The Shooting of Dangerous Dan McGrew. A bunch of the boys were whooping it up in a Malamute saloon. The kid that handles the music box was hitting a jag time tune. Back at the bar in a solo game sat Dangerous Dan McGrew, and watching his luck was his little love, the lady that's known as Lou. When out of the night, which was 50 below, and into the din and the glare, there stumbled a miner fresh from the creek, dog dirty and loaded for bear. He looked like a man with a foot in the grave and scarcely the strength of a louse, yet he tilted a poke of dust on the bar and he called for drinks on the house. There was none could place the stranger's face, though we searched ourselves for a clue, but we drank his health, and the last to drink was Dangerous Dan McGrew. There's men that somehow just grip your eyes and hold them hard like a spell, and such was he, and he looked to me like a man who had lived in hell. With a face most hair and a dreary stare of a dog whose day is done, as he watered the green stuff in his glass, and the drops fell one by one. Then I got to figuring who he was and wondering what he'd do, and I turned my head, and there watching him was a lady that's known as Lou. His eyes went rubbering round the room, and he seemed in a kind of a daze, till at last that old piano fell in the way of his wandering gaze. The ragtime kid was having a drink, there was no one else on the stool, so the stranger stumbles across the room and flops down there like a fool. In a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt he sat, and I saw him sway. Then he clutched the keys with his talon hands. My God, but that man could play. Were you ever out in the great alone when the moon was awful clear, and the icy mountains hem you in with a silence you most could hear, with only the howl of a timber wolf, and you camped there in the cold, a half-dead thing in a stark dead world, clean mad for the muck called gold? While high overhead, green, yellow, and red, the northern lights swept in bars, then you've got a hunch what the music meant, hunger and night and the stars. And hunger not of the belly kind that's banished with bacon and beans, but the gnawing hunger of lonely men for a home and all that it means. For a fireside far from the cares that are, four walls and a roof above, but oh so crammed full of cozy joy and crowned by a woman's love. A woman dearer than all the world and true as heaven is true. God, how ghastly she looks through her roods, a lady that's known as Lou. Then all of a sudden the music changed so soft you scarce could hear, but you felt that your life had been looted clean of all that it once held dear. That someone had stolen the woman you loved, that her love was a devil's lie, that your guts were gone and the best of you was to crawl away and die. 'Twas a crowning cry of harsh despair, and it thrilled you through and through. I guess I'll make it a spread in his ear, said dangerous Dan McGrew. The music almost died away, then it burst like a pent-up flood, and it seemed to say, repay, repay, and my eyes were blind with blood. The thought came back of an ancient wrong, and it stung like a frozen lash, and the lust awoke to kill, then the music stopped with a crash. And the stranger turned, and his eyes they burned in a most peculiar way. In a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt, he sat, and I saw him sway. Then his lips went in a kind of grin, and he spoke, and his voice was calm. And boys, says he, you don't know me, and none of you care a damn. But I want to state, and my words are straight, and I'll bet my poke they're true, that one of you's a hound of hell, and that one is Dan McGrew. Then I ducked my head, and the lights went out, and two guns blazed in the dark, and a woman screamed, and the lights went up, and two men lay stiff and stark. Pitched on his head and pumped full of lead was dangerous Dan McGrew, while a man from the creeks lay clutched to the breast of the lady that's known as Lou. These are the simple facts of the case, and I guess I ought to know. They say that the stranger was crazed with hooch, and I'm not denying it so. I'm not so wise as the lawyer guys, but strictly between us two, the woman that kissed him and pinched his poke was a lady that's known as Lou. Try this one, baby. See if you've ever heard it before. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails of their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge I cremated Sam McGee. Now Sam McGee was from Tennessee where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the South to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell, though he'd often say in his homely way that he'd sooner live in hell. On Christmas Day we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Why, talk of your cold through the parka's fold, it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we'd close and the lashes froze till sometimes we could not see, it wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed and the stars overhead were dancing heel and toe, he turned to me and Cap says he, I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request. Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no, then he says with a sort of a grin, it's a cursed cold and it's got right hold till I'm chilled clean through to the bone. Yet 'tain't being dead, it's the awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul or fair you'll cremate my last remains. A pal's last need is a thing to heed, so I swore I would not fail. And we started on at the streak of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched on the sleigh and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee, and before nightfall a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and I hurried horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, you may tax your brawn and brains, but your promise true, and it's up to you to cremate those last remains. Now a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb, and my heart, how I cursed that load. In the long, long night by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in a ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows, oh God, how I loathed that thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow, and on I went, though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad and I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in, and I'd often sing to the hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin. Till I came to the marge of Lake the Barge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice it was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. Then here, said I with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying round, and I heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared, and the furnace roared, and the blaze, such a blaze you seldom see. Then I burrowed a hole in a glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so, and the heavens scowled, and the huskies howled, and the winds began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot, wet sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I don't know why. And the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars came out and they danced about ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked, it's time I looked. And then the door I opened wide. And there sat Sam looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace roar. And he wore a smile you could see a mile. He said, please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and the storm. Since I left Plum Tree down in Tennessee, it's the first time I've been warm. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge I cremated Sam McGee. I may have to let that be the last one of those. I don't think I can remember any more of them. I'll try to get this made up for you, baby. Hopefully I had the record button pushed, or I may have to start over. Gene, I'm going to try to do a couple of these songs here. I don't know if I can do any good or not. My throat's kind of tore up. I'll get rid of this cold one day and I'll make you another better tape.